Hey guys, That's Magic here, and it's time to talk about the pre-release because apparently there's a ton of you out there that requested that I give like an actual tips video. Apparently you just didn't feel like looking for the last couple, so I'll just breeze through a whole bunch of the general tips. Now, I'm definitely not going to hit on like, what to eat, when to sleep, how much caffeine to have, that kind of stuff. I already made that one. Just go watch it. Let's talk about how to win, how to do well, how to not completely and utterly screw up your pre-release. Obviously, I should start with saying that you get 6 boosters plus 1 guaranteed foil date stamped rare or mythic. So you open up, you get 7 rares, you get 18 uncommons and 60 commons if I remember correctly. It might be 66, I don't know, they keep changing it, they got the double-sided cards, I don't even know anymore. Totally not important because the first thing you should do is open them all up and sort them by colors because you have to pick 1 to 2 colors, and in this one, it would be 1.5 to 2. I mean, you almost never go mono. I don't think I've ever seen somebody do that because you will not have enough cards in the deck. You have to get to 40. And keep in mind that anything you open is playable. If you open one of the masterpieces and it's from 10 sets ago, you can play with it. I wouldn't unless it's very relevant and powerful because it's probably worth a fortune, but, you go there to win, so why not? Definitely sleeve it and definitely be careful playing with it though. Now once you got your colors, you typically want to pick 2, but like I said, you could go 1.5 because there's a lot of colorless, a lot of artifacts. A lot of them aren't very good, and a ton of them are like synergy or vehicles, which either way they rely on other cards to work, and since your deck is overall probably going to kind of suck compared to, well, standard constructed of course, you can't count on that working. You could have a vehicle sitting out there for 5 turns and nobody to crew it. I mean, that could legitimately happen. Considering removal is key, as soon as you get a vehicle and you're able to crew it, they will blow up your vehicle. Now the flip side of that is the biggest tip I can give. Save your removal for something really big and really detrimental. Just because you have a 1-1 out and they have a 2-2 on turn 2, doesn't mean that on like turn 3 or 4 you should blow up that 2-2. Take some damage, go down to 16, 14, whatever, and see if you can improve the board state without having to lose your biggest kill spell, because later you might want to kill a 5-5 with it. In general, I would assume that somebody's deck has like 1 or 2 or 3 really like big bomb cards, or at least just something significant like a flying 5-5 or just, something good. Obviously, they pick the color for a reason, and it's usually because either the whole color was solid across the board and then you're in trouble, or they had like 3 or 4 just insane cards that are just so good, and then they kind of filled in the rest of the color. So you need to get the biggest bang for your buck on any kind of pin down, exile, creature kill, sacrifice, whatever gets a big creature off the field. Both players tend to start top decking pretty quick because, you can't control the amount of scry and draw and just all that stuff in most cases. So if you take the board state and remove their biggest creature from it, you can pretty much just swing out and win in most cases. I mean, that's kind of a generalization. But on the flip side, if they're just absolutely pounding you and you're top decking, you never know what you might pull. You might pull that giant like 0-7 wall with reach or something. Or of course a removal spell or a 1-1 death toucher. I mean, you never know. Just whatever's in your deck, you could pull something that just shuts them down and flips the game instantly. So definitely do not give up. Definitely do not forfeit. Now, in general, all of your decks are going to kind of suck. That's the point. That's, pre-release is everybody has like a level playing field, except some people might pull some just absurdly powerful bombs. Last time I pulled a Gisela and I just ran the whole tournament with that. But people tried to blow her up, but luckily I had 2 counter spells and then 1 turn aside, which would, counter anything that targets her. I also had exile of my own in case somebody brought out something bigger. So, I mean, flying 4-3 first strike with lifelink, that is a bomb because they probably can't block it. If they can block it, they'll probably lose the creature. And I'm gaining life no matter what. That is the way you win a limited format. So standalone cards that do not rely on anything else are incredibly important unless you look at your card pool and you've got it sorted by colors. You kind of lean in towards some colors and you say, oh my gosh, I've got a bunch of cards that work with each other. I've got cards that say for every artifact on the field, or if you have more than 3 artifacts on the field, or just whatever it happens to be, and then you've got a ton of artifacts. The same goes for wizards, artificers, energy counters. So the biggest thing you can do is have a synergy deck where it just all kind of works, or like 60 or 70% of them kind of work together. If you can't get that going, then, get some 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 cost creatures, throw them in there, pick your 2 strongest colors, pick as much removal as you possibly can, and just try to beat them the old-fashioned way. Counting on 1 or 2 cards is kind of stupid considering you're building a 40 card deck, so you're not guaranteed to get to either one of those cards in a given game. It's pretty likely, but over the number of games and the number of rounds, it's not likely enough to just sweep. Now, like I said in the other video with my Gisela, I just had draw, scry, draw, scry, draw, scry, draw, scry for the rest of the deck. And control, delay, life gain, just stall, get out Gisela, win. So I was just mowing through my deck, and I only got her out about 70% of the games. So the next good tip is do not rely on one card. That it's not good enough. I would say in a given limited game, you'll probably draw, if it really goes out there and you're not totally getting stomped, you'll probably draw 17 to 20 cards total. I mean, the turns really get going. Like, it is possible that you just get draw screwed, you get nothing but fun-sized creatures, and they're getting their biggest, and you lose on, like, turn 8 or something, because they're just swinging for, like, 3 damage with a whole row. That happens, but usually it's kind of a, shootout, and it draws itself out. Remember, these decks are not what anybody would call good. Now, as far as selecting the colors, synergy is first. If you can get some pattern going, good, especially if it crosses colors. Otherwise, just go down the priority list. Number one priority is definitely removing their creatures, because if they can't have creatures on the field, they won't win. Creatures tend to win limited games. So if you tap it down and keep it tapped, put an aura on it, just anything that's removal, not literally creature kill, just anything that gets your creature out of the way. Now, I'm not actually going to rank these in order because it's debatable, but equipment is incredibly important, because let's say it's like a +2/+1. They remove your creature, okay, you move it to the next creature. I mean, a lot of the stuff in the set equips for 1 or 2. You're going to have mana coming out your ears while you're top decking a bunch of like land and cards you don't need. So if every time you summon a 2/2, it actually becomes like a 4/3 because of the equipment, that's huge. I mean, it's almost like summoning Always Watching. That's a non-stop boost of +1/+1 plus vigilance to all your creatures. It's kind of similar to that, because as soon as something comes out, you're going to equip it. Now, in my other video, I obviously said ambush boost is almost as good as creature removal, because it almost always is creature removal. You swing with a 2/2, they've got a 4/4, of course they're going to block it. I mean, either that or they're going to let it through because they're like, this is suspicious. So if they have 20 life, they'll probably just go to 18 so that they don't accidentally lose their 4/4. Then you're kind of in trouble, but keep swinging with it. Either that or leave it on defense, wait for them to swing with their 4/4 the next time, and then ambush it. So let's say it's, +3/+3. There actually is a card that does that. There's multiple that are +3 attack, actually. Block, their 4/4's dead, good for you. Even better if it's ambush where you don't have to trade, like it grants indestructible or regeneration. Also, it's a good finisher. If they let your 1 damage creature through with 7 life and you boost it 6, which would actually be kind of hard to do, boom, they're dead. Trample, now you don't even care what their decision is. You're just going to boost it and trample it. If they want to get their creature killed, great. If they want to get themselves killed, great. Works either way. So stuff like that is good. So don't just say, I'm going to pick the 24 best creatures and just hope it works. Now, don't be afraid to slip in a couple creatures that cost like 5 or 6 mana. They are powerful, and if you top deck one while you're losing, you just turn the whole game around, because now you're winning, basically. If they're in your opening hand, chances are the game's going to be long enough that you will get it out. I have seen people where their most powerful colors were the most powerful, like 4 and up mana cost creatures, so like practically their whole deck was 4 to 6, so they put in 20 lands. On turn 4, they were almost mathematically guaranteed to have 4 mana on the field, so they would do nothing turn 1, 2, or 3 but drop lands, and then they would be at 4 and they would just start running you over. So if they can start dominating the game on turn 4, that is doable. I wouldn't recommend this, but the point is, take a look at your mana costs. If you've got almost no 1 or 2 cost, and spell and creature-wise you've got a ton of like 3 and 4, you might want to go up to like 17 or 18 land. If it's all dirt cheap, every time you top deck a land late game, it just costs you your entire turn in most cases. So definitely cut it to like 16, probably not 15 though, because think about it, 15 out of 40 is 1 in every 4 cards. So you start the game with 7, you're very likely to have 2 in your hand, and there's almost nothing in your deck that costs 3, it's almost all 1 and 2, you're actually all set. In the entire space of the game, you'll probably get 4, and that's it. But you start flirting with like 18, that's very close to every other card. So every time you go up or down 1 land, it has just an insane change in your probability of pulling lands. I mean, 1 and 4 versus 1 and 2 just by adding a couple lands, that's huge. So you got bombs, you got equipment to make your creatures across the board bigger, you've got removal. What else is important? Well, a card advantage, as they call it. Anytime you can draw a card, that's good. Now, straight up like Divination, pay 3, draw 2, those aren't amazing. I mean, they're pretty good. I'd put it in if I had nothing better to do, or nothing better to put in the deck, I should say. Because you're wasting the majority of the mana on your turn, usually, to get 2 more cards, when if you didn't have that in your hand, if you had a different card instead, you would have drawn that card instead and basically drawn 1. So you're only going up 1 for 3 mana. Now, if there's something that says every time blah happens, draw a card, and it's passive, or hey, pay 2 mana, draw a card as like a ability or like a tap ability, whoa. About equally as important with draw is scry. It's a little bit less good. If you scry and you look at the top card and you're like, oh cool, a kill spell, that's awesome, and then you leave it there, you did nothing. You completely wasted the entire thing. If you scry and you're like, oh my god, my 8th land, no thanks, and put it on the bottom, you just saved yourself an entire turn cycle. Your entire next turn plus their entire turn while you're waiting for something that doesn't suck. It's almost equivalent to taking an extra turn. Almost. I mean, obviously you're missing combat and some other stuff, so not really, but it's very, very similar. But only if it works. Keep in mind that whenever you draw a card, it also gets a bad card out of the ways, except now it's in your hand, which is technically better than having it on the bottom of the library, no matter how bad it is. So draw is good, passive draw is better, scry is good, passive scry is better, especially scry you don't have to pay for, that you could do during their end step, like Sigiled Starfish. I do believe that in Eldritch Moon, there was a card that said during your upkeep, scry 1. It's just an automatic trigger, just like the Thassa God card. You're going through your deck at double the speed now, and your opponent isn't. And it's not quite double the speed because you might leave something there, but every time a bad card comes up, you get rid of it, so it kind of is double speed. You will get to the cards you need, even based on just the board state, not just, oh, I want to get out my 5/5 dragon. It's, oh, a kill spell, I could use that, or oh, a kill spell, they have nothing left on the field. Honestly, draw it anyway. If they have nothing left on the field and you have something left on the field, draw that kill spell, leave that on the top of the deck. That means the next time they bring out something, it's gone and you're still going to win the game. Now, some of the biggest mistakes I've seen people make is, oh, I pulled a dual land. One of my rares was a land. It's a 2-color. That's the color I'm going with. The 1 color fixing card is not good enough. That is nowhere near good enough to pick out your colors. The other thing is, oh, 4 out of my 7 rares were black, but my entire black pile has 3 creatures in it and 0 kill spells. Guess what? You're not going black. That exact situation happened to me at the last pre-release. In fact, I think it was 5 of my rares were black. I've run decks using 0 of my rares. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it happens in rare cases. So don't let your rares dominate it, and don't just say, oh, there's 3 really good cards, you know, whether they're rare, mythic, or not, if they're uncommon, whatever. And don't just see them and say, hey, those are powerful. The entire rest of the cards of that color are complete garbage, but I'm going to build it because I'll get those out. First of all, no, you won't. Second of all, if you do, they'll just blow it up. That's way too narrow, way too low of a density of good cards. It's just not going to work. Oh, and by the way, I just realized a mistake at the beginning of my video. You might get a foil, and it could be a rare. So it's not going to be for sure 7 rares, 18 uncommons, and 60 or whatever commons. You might get a foil. Foils are 1 in 4. I have seen people pull 9 rares and use all of them in the deck. They were 2 colors, the other rest of the colored cards were good enough, and they just utterly obliterated everybody in their path. So the last tip I can give is your card pool dominates everything. I've seen people go black-red vampires. I've seen it. It happens. Probably a lot less likely to happen in Kaladesh, but at the last pre-release, it happened. It was like black-red madness card draw. He could have brought the damn deck to standard the next week, except that it's 40 cards. So much removal. I mean, black-red removal, card draw, madness, damage, lifelink, flying vampires. It was terrible. So there might be some really nasty matchups. Don't get too mad over it. Just get the round over with and wait for the next one. As far as other tips, I'll just generalize it by saying anything that would be really good in standard is probably really good in limited if it's like evasion. Like, oh, this has hexproof. This has trample, so I'm going to get my damage through. It's reliability, durability. And of course, surprises. That's what I always tell people. Reliability, durability, surprises. If they know that you pulled a card, you drop that it's a land, you now have 0 cards in your hand, you swing with your 2 creatures, they know exactly how big they are, They know exactly what you're doing. There are no surprises. If you have a crappy board state and then they summon something even worse on their side, but then you counter it with a counterspell, surprise! And that just backfired on them and damaged them significantly. Or they finally got out a 7/7 and then you steal it with like an active treason effect and now you own it and you swing with it. Surprise! And also, good game, you just lost. Or they choose a very, very bold, daring blocking assignment and then you boost all of your creatures across the board +2. Surprise! I just turned the entire game around. Now all of your creatures are dead, all of mine are still alive. So any kind of ambush, whether it be, boost ambush or like counterspell ambush, I guess you could call it, anything that you'd classify as a surprise, it's probably pretty good because they won't see it coming. And obviously that applies to standard as well. Now, one last mistake that I constantly see people make is they see a combo and it's like a game-ending horrific super combo, but they don't realize the mathematical probability of it working. And you don't have to get out your calculator. I'm just saying a card says, I'm a 1/1, but I become a 5/5 if you own an artifact with power 5 or greater. And then you think, oh cool, my deck has 2 artifacts that have power 5 or greater. Yeah, are those going to meet up in a game? Really? If it's not in your opening hand, that's a 1 in 33 shot, and then like a 2 out of 32 remaining shot. Those cards are never going to see each other on the battlefield, sorry. So don't count on ridiculous synergy and ridiculous combos that are never going to happen. Now, if you have 14 Artificers in your deck and a card says if you control an Artificer, okay. You'd be hard-pressed not to put an Artificer in there, but don't prop up your whole deck on that one combo either. Don't just throw in every Artificer you can see, whether they're terrible or not, just to get the combo off. That's a Glass Cannon deck, and Glass Cannons do not work in Limited. And okay, I gotta slip in one more tip, but this should be really obvious. If a card is one and done, it is less useful than a permanent like field effect, like a property. If you have a card that says grant the creature +2/+2 as an instant, okay, you use it one time, it's done. One and done. It's good ambush, I'd probably put it in the deck, but a much more powerful option, especially when you're just picking out your colors in the first place, would be an enchantment that says all of your creatures get +1/+1 forever. Like the second they hit the field, they're under the effect of that enchantment, and enchantments are pretty hard to remove. Once you throw it out, it's not one and done, it's one and still there for the rest of the game. You want to dominate the board, you want to flood it with powerful stuff, you want your deck to build on itself, and you definitely want to get the bombs out, and if they're not a bomb, get them bigger with ambush, get them bigger with equipment. That is the most bread and butter way to win Limited. If you guys have any tips of your own that help you win, or if you have any questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section. Otherwise, have fun at pre-release, and I'll see you next video.